Hi, I'm Taylor with Mom on the Spectrum, and this is part two of my series, Autism and Sexuality. Part one was a general overview of how sexuality might be experienced differently by autistic people. And in part two today, we're going to define several important terms for better understanding gender and sexual identity. Now, before we jump in, I want to make sure you know this topic is not for everyone. I'm well aware. If it's not for you, just keep scrolling, please. There's so many other things to focus your attention on, and what you focus on, you create more of. So if you stay here and you focus on the negativity that you feel about this subject, it's going to make you not feel great, and it's not going to do anything helpful for the people here. The people that this video is for, really at the end of the day, when it comes to better understanding our experience as a human being on this planet, it helps us feel more alive, to take up more space, to feel more validated, to be a truer, more authentic representation of ourselves. And really, if we could grasp this idea that we're all just trying to be more understood and to be able to connect to each other more deeply, if we could allow people space to just do this, use the words you need to do that, right? Like use any word you need. Any sexual identity word, any gender identity word that you might need to better understand your life here on Earth, you're welcome to do that. Okay. I hope you feel welcome to do that. And if that's not your cup of tea, I hear you. It's not for everybody. I'm not here to convince you that you should be on board with all of this. That's not my job. But if this video isn't for you, kindly just please keep moving. And those of us that this video is for, we're going to have a great time exploring who we are as a person. And that's what I'm all about. Okay. All right, with that being said, before we jump into the definitions, I want to make sure that you know about one of my very favorite resources that I've created as an autistic content creator. I have something called the Meltdown Survival Guide. And this is an in-depth guide that I've created to help you better understand what autistic meltdowns look like, especially if you're a late diagnosed autistic person. It's going to help you better prepare for your meltdowns, to better navigate them when you're going through one, and to recover more quickly. So if that's something that you're interested in, check out the link for that in the description. Last thing before we jump in, if you're new to the community, welcome. So glad you're here. If you're returning, you know I love you. Make sure that you like this video if the video is helpful to you, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any updates. Okay, that being said, let's jump in. First of all, I want to share a statistic with you. I shared some of this in the first video, and I will put a link to this data in the description. Okay, this is from spectrumnews.org regarding gender and sexual differences in the autistic population. Autism appears to be more prevalent among gender diverse people than it is in the general population. A 2018 Australian survey of transgender adolescents and young adults found that 22.5% had been diagnosed with autism, compared with 2.5% of all Australians. Some experts estimate that 6 to 25.5% of gender diverse people are autistic. The next statistic here: only 30% of autistic people in a 2018 study identified as heterosexual, compared with 70% of neurotypical participants. That's a big difference. And although this makes me chuckle, although half of 247 autistic women in a 2020 study identified as cisgender, just 8% reported being exclusively heterosexual. Okay, those are very interesting statistics, and I share those because it's important to know, along with our neurological differences, we have a different experience of the world around us, and that affects so many different parts of our lives, including our sexuality. So if you've been, especially a late diagnosed autistic adult, a high masking autistic adult, your sexuality is one topic that you might now just be exploring as a 20, 30, 40, 50, 60-year-old. I've got 70-year-olds on this channel too. You're all welcome here, and sexuality is an important part of the human experience. So again, as a late diagnosed autistic adult, this might be a new frontier. You're finally waking up to the fact that, oh my gosh, I've been masking my whole life, and I think I've kind of masked away who I am and what I want and what I need, even when it comes to my sexuality. Okay. So I'm here to hopefully hold your hand and kind of guide you a bit through this. I want to let you know that wherever you're at today, in terms of understanding your sexuality, it's the right place to be. Okay. You don't have to find one word or one label that fits your experience. You can use as many of them as you want. Okay. There's no limit. And let's explore some of these terms together. Okay. I'm going to be looking at my notes here today because my executive functioning has been really low lately. Okay. The first word here is aromantic. These definitions are from Medical News Today, and I will put all of the links in the description. Okay, aromantic. This is someone who may not feel any romantic attraction toward anyone. They may not want a relationship beyond friendship. Those who identify with this orientation may also identify with another orientation. A person's romantic attraction can differ from their sexual attraction. For example, a person may not feel romantic attraction toward people, but may still be sexually attracted to some individuals. The next term, this is a big one for us on the spectrum, okay? We're going to talk about the term asexual. And there's going to be several terms within this spectrum of asexuality that we're going to dive into as well. So asexual is an umbrella term that encompasses a broad spectrum of sexual orientations. According to the LGBTQIA Resource Center, asexuality is a spectrum. Some people may experience no sexual or romantic attraction toward anyone, while others may experience varying degrees of sexual or romantic attraction toward people. Those who identify with this orientation do not have to abstain from sex to be asexual. Okay, here are some different orientations that exist within the asexuality spectrum. Okay, the first word here on our list is sex averse. This is when a person is averse or entirely disinterested in sex and sexual behavior. Sex favorable. This is when a person has positive feelings towards sex in some situations. Sex indifferent. This refers to those who feel neutral about sex and sexual behavior. Sex repulsed. This refers to those who are repulsed by sex and sexual behavior. This is a new term to me, cupiosexual. If someone identifies as cupiosexual, they do not experience sexual attraction but still desire to engage in sexual behavior or have a sexual relationship. Libidoist asexual, totally new, both of these terms to me. Libidoist asexual. This term refers to those who identify as asexual but experience sexual feelings that they can satisfy with masturbation or self-stimulation. If you're looking for more information about masturbation and self-stimulation, we covered this topic in part 1. And yes, I'm getting your emails. It's okay if that topic is not for you. Gray sexual. Those who are gray sexual experience sexual attraction either infrequently or not very intensely. This is quite a common experience among people on the spectrum. And then gray romantic. People who identify as gray romantic may experience romantic attraction either rarely or not very strongly. So again, this whole category of asexuality is very common, very prevalent for people on the spectrum. If you find yourself somewhere in the mix, that's a great place to be and you're not alone. Our next term on the list is demisexual. A person who identifies as demisexual typically only feels sexual attraction toward a person with whom they have already established a strong emotional bond. Some people who are demisexual may have no interest or only a slight interest in sexual activity. I would say after asexuality, demisexuality is probably one of the other most common experiences among people in the autistic community. Again, there's so many different expressions. It's okay if you don't find yourself in one of those, but I do hear those two terms talked about frequently. Okay, the next two terms, we're talking about them together, pansexual and omnisexual. These sexual orientations refer to people who feel attraction toward people of all genders and sexes. A typical identifier for people with this orientation is that gender is not a factor in sexual or romantic attraction. The next term on our list is queer. People of all sexualities under the LGBTQIA+ umbrella may also identify as queer. Historically, many people use the word queer as a slur, but people belonging to the LGBTQIA+ communities may now choose to use this term to reclaim it. It's generally not a good idea for people outside of communities to use this term. Outside of these communities to use this term. Okay, and now some gender terms that might be helpful for us. This is from itgetsbetter.org. The first one on here is gender dysphoria. This is the feeling of significant discomfort or distress related to one's biological sex, gender identity, or expression. The opposite of that would be gender euphoria. This is the feeling of significant rightness or comfort with one's biological sex, gender identity, or expression. Intersex is someone who, due to a variety of factors, has reproductive or sexual anatomy that do not seem to fit the typical definitions for the female or male sex. Some people who are intersex may identify with a gender assigned to them at birth, while others do not. Non-binary is a person whose gender identity does not conform to gender binary of male-female. And transgender is someone whose gender identity differs from the one that was assigned to them at birth. There's another term on here that I just want to introduce. It has too much information for me to share it here in this video today, but there's a term called neuroqueer, and there's a whole website dedicated to it. The intersectionality of neurodivergence, sexuality. Part of why I'm not talking about it is because it's a very difficult term to define, and it's supposed to be that way. So I'll put a link in the description. I think some of you will love exploring the term neuroqueer. I'm just going to leave that there for you. Okay, so again, to recap, these are some terms and definitions that might be helpful for understanding your place on the sexuality spectrum, especially as an autistic person. So just remember, just as we experience the world differently because of our brains, we also experience the world differently through the lens of sexuality and through the lens of relationships and social connection. So I want to encourage you to stay curious about your patterns, to stay curious about your needs and wants, and to adopt kind of a playful curiosity and exploration, like a sense of exploration about your life and where you want to go. Okay, and the next part 3 of the Autism and Sexuality series, we are going to be talking about practical tips for navigating sensory overwhelm and the physical side of relationships. And I want to remind you to check out my meltdown survival guide I mentioned at the beginning of the video. The link to that is in the description. And if you're someone who regularly experiences overwhelm and frustration because of autistic meltdowns, and maybe you're wanting to better understand them, better recover from them, I'm here to help you through that guide. So thanks so much for watching. Let me know in the comments which terms are resonating with you and which terms you'd like to add to the conversation, because y'all always surprise me with new information. So I'd love to hear from you. Let's connect soon, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.